The X-Men franchise as we know it comes to a close with the latest Dark Phoenix. Does it bring about a satisfying conclusion or does it go up in flames? My thoughts on the film coming up. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin. As always, if this is your first time checking out our channel, consider hitting that subscribe button where we take on the best and worst of cinema on a weekly basis. Dark Phoenix is written and directed by Simon Kinberg and sees the return of Sophie Turner, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and Ty Sheridan among the rest of the returning X-Men cast. Taking place in the 90s this time around, Dark Phoenix follows Jean Grey after she's hit by a cosmic force during a life-threatening rescue mission in space. This force transforms her into one of the most powerful mutants of all time. Wrestling with this increasingly unstable power, as well as her own personal demons, Jean spirals out of control, tearing the X-Men family apart and threatening to destroy the very fabric of our planet. While it seems the internet is ready to collectively dismiss this film and really the Fox X-Men franchise as a whole, it's important to remember the legacy of this franchise and how critical it was in pushing the comic book film medium forward. With the Disney buyout of Fox, the idea of a Dark Phoenix film was almost immediately panned, as many just didn't see the point and really just wanted the MCU to get their hands on these characters. That, and also Kinberg tried doing Dark Phoenix once before with X-Men The Last Stand, and well, we all know how that one turned out. Needless to say, Dark Phoenix is facing an uphill battle, and while I don't think it'll necessarily win many of the skeptics over, it certainly isn't the abomination many were predicting it would be. The ultimate problem with Dark Phoenix isn't even this particular film's fault. Due to a lack of laying the groundwork for this new X-team and establishing the characters and their relationships, the first-class crew excluded, of course, it's really hard to get fully invested in this narrative. The seeds for Dark Phoenix really should have been planted like 2 films ago in order for us to really feel the gravity of Jean's situation and the rift her circumstance causes between Charles and the team, especially Cyclops. And so because we haven't spent the proper amount of time with this new X team, while the story may be personal, the stakes overall feel very inconsequential. And a lot of this stems from an overall problem with the script, which I don't find to be horrible, but it's not nearly as good as it needs to be in order for this story to work. There's an overall sense of melodrama, and the dialogue certainly doesn't help, with some campy lines thrown in there as well. There's a report going around that the runtime for this film was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it seems like they may have actually cut a lot out because the actual runtime is 1 hour and 53 minutes, and weirdly enough, I felt it needed to be longer. And it's not like the story felt rushed. I actually found the pacing to be fine. It's on the slower end, but not unbearable. But they needed the length to devote to character moments. Many will probably disagree with that because it is a slower paced film and you definitely feel the length, but the result is also dull and somewhat empty. And so those moments were kind of necessary in order to feel something. And that's the perfect segue into my next problem with the film, which is that I felt nothing. Overall, the movie just has a very bleak and brooding outlook, and not in a good way. The film is called Dark Phoenix, and they definitely play into the dark portion of that name. The tone is very drab, and the movie doesn't really climax. It just maintains this consistent level of numbness throughout. And this is coming from someone who actually enjoyed Man of Steel and BVS Ultimate. And speaking of those 2 films, Hans Zimmer is in the composer's chair for Dark Phoenix, and to be honest, I'm a bit mixed on his work here. Isolated from the rest of the film, I found Zimmer's score to be fantastic. It had elements of Interstellar and Man of Steel mixed in there, and definitely created an atmosphere. It just so happens that when you pair it with this really bleak story, that the atmosphere becomes even bleaker. At the beginning of the film, Zimmer's score really works. It has a driving sense, and actually that can be said throughout the entire film. It really does drive the narrative, but at the same time, the score does have this brooding mentality, and you never get a sense of hope, which is desperately needed in a story like this, and in an X-Men film in general. And so while Zimmer's work is great, it did dampen the mood, and that's why I feel that John Ottman's original X-Men themes would have serviced this film well by livening it up a bit. It's so perplexing, I just never would have thought that Hans Zimmer's score would have been something I'd be mixed on walking out of this film. That being said, I do think that Simon Kinberg was able to salvage a little bit of this film's soul by doing a good job of establishing the relationship between Charles and Jean. While it's definitely not as intimate or emotional as it should have been, it does get the job done. And a big reason why these characters and relationships are even remotely passable is once again due to the excellent performances by the cast. James McAvoy is truly giving it his all in this film. He's really trying to make the best out of the material that he's given. Xavier sees his former mistakes come back to haunt him, obviously, but something that I didn't expect, which I really appreciated, was how he was challenged on his self-righteous tendencies, and it created something that the character ultimately had to come to terms with. McAvoy at this point is a pro and just truly gets the essence of Charles Xavier and the evolution of the character. He continues to be a major asset to this franchise, and I'll definitely be sad to see him go. Sophie Turner as Jean Grey was also excellent, once again making the best out of what she was given. Jean Grey was not very well established in this new timeline of X-Men films, and even with her brief stint in Apocalypse, it wasn't enough for a film solely focused on her to be effective. Kinberg did a serviceable job of trying to get us invested into Grey, but it was really Sophie Turner who elevated it and brought the material to a whole new level. We really get a sense of the struggle that Jean is going throughout the course of this film because of Turner's performance. There are several moments, very intimate moments of her just breaking down or looking out or just feeling conflicted, and you feel her pain and anguish. It's also because of how great Sophie Turner is that we're able to somewhat buy into the idea of her and Cyclops being romantically involved. Michael Fassbender, similar to James McAvoy, is a pro and just gets the character wholeheartedly. He's another one I'm going to be sad to see go, and while he's not utilized in this film as much as he has been in previous films, I do like several character moments he has between him and Charles. As opposed to Apocalypse, I thought Jennifer Lawrence actually cared in this movie and delivered somewhat of a good performance. And while what they do with the character was already spoiled by the director himself, you do feel the emotional impact in certain characters, namely Charles and Beast. And lastly, Jessica Chastain. Yeah, her character was probably about as bland as Apocalypse was. She really did nothing, and we knew next to nothing about her or the race of people that she's supposed to be. Hell, I don't even think we got a name for her, and if we did, it was briefly glossed over. There was clearly much more to this character, because there's no way I can believe that Jessica Chastain would have signed on to this project had they not written the character better. I just have a feeling that a lot of her stuff was cut out. Unfortunately, you kind of needed some of that in order for the villain to be effective. Before I give you my final verdict on Dark Phoenix, guys, why don't you take a second here and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel if you feel so inclined for more movie reviews and movie-related content on a weekly basis. While Dark Phoenix certainly isn't the worst the X-Men franchise has to offer, and it really isn't a bad movie, it is a very empty, bleak, dreary, and brooding film. The story they tell is fine, and it's a well-made movie with excellent performances, but the seeds for this story really should have been planted earlier on in order for us to feel the emotional weight that was necessary for a Dark Phoenix story to be effective. It's fine, it's serviceable, but with a story like Dark Phoenix, it could have been more, and so the X-Men franchise goes out on an unremarkable note, sadly. And so, for all of these reasons and the reasons I've mentioned throughout my review, I'm ultimately going to be giving Dark Phoenix Revive Needed. And now I want to hear from you all. I want to know what your favorite X-Men film is. I'm not talking Wolverine, I'm not talking Deadpool, just purely X-Men. I want to know what your favorite one of those is down in the comments section below. And if you've seen Dark Phoenix, be sure to let me know your thoughts and opinions down there as well. As always, guys, you can like Men vs. Movies on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men vs. Movies. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right. That's going to do it for this review, guys, and until next time, take care.